Because I think ultimately science asks the how questions, how does this ecological system fit together? Why and how does the Earth keep spinning on its axis and keep rotating about the sun? And then my beliefs answer the question why. Why does it all happen? What's the purpose behind this?
Chasing Unicorns was created upon the need to think critically about the world. Importantly, it was created to showcase people who had taken it upon themselves to ignore the conventional wisdom and seek out answers to the questions they had about that world. Stephen Hawking once suggested that our ability to ask important questions about the world and about our place within that world makes us as human beings very special. In this second episode of Chasing Unicorns, we continue our look and depiction of our blue globe, as well as the intellectual efforts to go beyond it. This episode is called The Sound of the Stars. In the second episode of Chasing Unicorns, we document Matt, a postgraduate student at the University of Birmingham who is studying astroseismology. I'll explain later what that means. Matt is working on a research topic which is directly related to the work of NASA. However, such research has lately fallen out of sorts with the public. It has fallen out of popularity and to a large degree fallen out of consciousness, with few people seeing the need for an investment of time, money, or manpower in such projects.
We can't afford some things, and by the way, going to Mars is one of them.
It was only back in the 1960s where space travel became an important part of the public consciousness.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
It was only then it became part of a great governmental and corporate drive to make humans a space species. Now, to a large extent, this was less of a scientific pursuit or even an expansion of our intellectual borders, but more so to do with the arms race raging between the two Cold War camps, the USA and the Soviet Union. The intellectual and physical challenge posed by space travel had been taken on by multiple industries, but has in recent years been overshadowed by the transformation and prioritization of other industries. Other industries such as the growth of the computer technology industry has been the example of that, and companies like Apple, Facebook and Google, which have become more than just companies, but cultural institutions, shaping the way we view the world. There is now, and has been for the past 30 years, more of a focus on the new iPhone or latest gadget, rather than the need for humans to become an interplanetary species. Peter Thiel, a well-known venture capitalist, has suggested
that we live in a world where the world of stuff has been regulated and the world of bits has not been regulated.
Space and its infinite nature has been a point of wonder and amazement for humans since the days of Aristotle. Matt is an interesting person for Chasing Unicorns because he is someone who has taken it upon himself to prioritize his interests and focus on answering the questions he has of the world, namely those which concern the space outside our blue globe, and the connections with our human nature, and even with the role of divine intervention. Stephen Hawking once said that we are just an advanced breed of monkeys on a very minor planet of a very average star, but we can understand the universe. That makes us something very special. Our ability to perceive and understand the world, our ability to even ask the questions, why, what, how, when, makes us very special. Hawking also suggested that the greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge. As young people, we are in the best position to explore the most important and challenging questions which face us as human beings, including the challenge of the vastness of space, as well as the imaginative possibilities it offers. Young people are at the intersection of their lives where they have the greatest capacity to constantly learn, but also the greatest openness to ideas and opinions. We are most willing to not hide behind an illusion of knowledge, but instead consistently push for new ideas. For this episode, I have compiled a series of short films to showcase what Matt does on a daily basis, what he believes in and holds true to, and his views and ideas which influence and affect young people. They include At on the Move, The Sound of the Stars, Down to the Why, The Big Picture, Matt's Guide to the Galaxy. Hey Matt, are you alright mate?
So my name's Matt Schofield. I grew up in London and I'm an astroseismologist here at the University of Birmingham.
Okay. Let's do it.
Cool. So I grew up in North London and I had a pretty great childhood. I enjoyed myself. I went to school in Hertfordshire and I enjoyed it there, especially in the sixth form. That was really good because then I started to get a bit more of a personality.
First time you were introduced to the dynamics of space and particularly about kind of astrophysics.
So I remember doing a project at primary school where we looked at the solar system and I thought it was absolutely incredible. And so much more interesting than everything else we were doing. So that was, I guess, where my interest was sparked. Throughout secondary school, I mean, I always enjoyed science, but I was never amazing at it. I was never particularly passionate about it. It wasn't until sixth form, but particularly after university, that I really started loving space and loving astrophysics. But in terms of astrophysics as a kind of a path, I guess I didn't really choose that until after university. So quite late until I decided that was what I wanted to go into specifically. We're using solar reference values here. So this is the corresponding value for the sun, and this is the corresponding mass of the sun. So if we compare our stars to the sun, then we can learn things about the star like its mass.
So what is it that you do, Matt?
So I'm a scientist here at the University of Birmingham and I'm looking at the sound waves that exist inside stars.
What's that called?
That's called astroseismology. Astroseismology. Astro means star and seismic refers to tremors inside the star.
Hold on. Hello and welcome to another edition of What the F***, the part of the show where we look at what the F*** just happened. In this episode, we look at Matt and what the F*** he just meant when he said
astroseismology.
This is What the F***, the Sound of the Stars edition. So what does astroseismology mean? How does it work? And how does Matt use it on a daily basis? Astroseismology is a tool and research technique used by physicists to study stars. It aims to look at stars from distant galaxies to understand more about them, like their size and composition. From this information, scientists hope to gain more of an understanding about the universe more generally and, interestingly, about our star and solar system. Specifically, it looks at the frequencies which are trapped within stars, and the resonance which occurs due to these frequencies. Astroseismology is often referred to as the natural music of the stars, or the sound of the stars, because stars are able to make sound naturally within their interiors, very much like a musical instrument. In astroseismology, scientists look for slight changes in a star's light radiation. These changes in light radiation levels are to the human eye impossible to detect, but only appear as slight changes in the frequencies of the light waves. The reason behind the changing light frequencies is due to the surface of the star moving slightly in and out. This is because the frequencies within these stars make it resonate, thereby compressing and decompressing the material within the star. When the star compresses, it becomes hotter and therefore emits more light radiation, therefore becoming brighter. When it relaxes, it cools and becomes a little dimmer. When scientists like Matt can track the different frequencies or the oscillations which penetrate into the sun at different depths, they can find reliable information about the interior of the sun, like their density, mass, structures and overall composition. So how does astroseismology and the sound of the stars actually help Matt on a daily basis? Now this is a really exciting bit.
So my research is focused on looking at these sound waves trapped inside stars, but with respect to other stars that have got planets around them, just like there are planets around our sun in the solar system. So if we know things about the star, like what its radius is, how big it is, what can we learn about the planet? Well, if we observe the planet transiting in front of the star.
The transit method for detecting distant planets and information about them, by measuring the dimming of a star as the planet passes between it and the Earth. The transit being the passage of a planet between the distant star and Earth.
It will make the intensity in the light dip, and if we measure that intensity dip, then it will tell us how big or small the planet is with respect to the star. If you see a really big dip, then you know you've got a really big planet coming in front of your star. Whereas if you see only a little dip, then the planet must be smaller with respect to the star. So by using astroseismology to learn the radius of the star and looking at these dips in the light profile, we can work out the size of our planets, and so potentially if they're habitable.
Exoplanets is the scientific terminology, but yes, you heard right. Yes, this is the holy grail. This is why Matt and the research he is doing is so important and so exciting. He is looking for other planets and other solar systems and other galaxies to potentially move into. This is some interstellar type shit.
Everybody ready to say goodbye to our solar system? To our galaxy. Here we go.
I'm applying this to the next NASA satellite, which is called TESS, and that's going to be launched in December 2017. The aim of that is to find stars just like the Sun in the same kind of evolution that have got planets around them. So my work is going to be able to constrain the properties of these planets and the stars.
Can you believe it? Matt is working for NASA. Matt is working on extensive research for NASA on so-called exoplanets, planets which are potentially habitable but actually exist thousands and millions, billions of miles away in distant galaxies. I don't know whether that's classified information or not. I don't know. So if we get our act together as a human race, we could live on other planets, interplanetary species. There are no other known parts of the universe that are more harder to see and understand than the internal structures of stars. The sound of the stars has become the avenue through which the most extensive, effective and important research has occurred on the wider reaches of our universe. Astroseismology and the work of Matt astroseism on the wider reaches of our universe. Matt's research and the goal of finding information about exoplanets utilizes the techniques of astroseismology. The sound of the stars is vital to the work he does every day, as well as the relationship with NASA and their next mission, TESS. The search for potentially habitable planets is not only an academic endeavor, but a human one, because this research has the potential to impact every one of us and the rest of humanity's existence.
The great thing about astroseismology is that before it came along, there wasn't anything that could give us such detailed, accurate results about the properties of these stars. if we learn about the properties of these stars and we look at them in big groups using astroseismology, so like with the distribution of the masses, how evolved all these stars are, then we can learn things about the galaxy as a whole that other astro techniques just don't really give us.
That's maybe the most important thing, is to shake off this erroneous notion that life is there and you're just going to live in it, versus embrace it, change it, improve it, make your mark upon it.
What's your motivation for research? So what gets you up every single morning, gets you to the office without being cliche? You know, when you come to work every single day, what's the goal? Apart from like learning more, right? Because that's obviously that is one of the goals of academics, right? That is the goal.
Yeah.
But what is your personal goal?
Yeah, so the perfect question to ask any academic, any researcher is, what's the point? Why are you bothering? And I think I'd certainly ask myself that question, and the reason is partly because I love what I'm doing, but that's not enough of a justification. It's mainly because I'm making a real difference. I'm working with this satellite called TESS, which NASA's going to launch in 2017. They want to find as many planets around other stars as they possibly can. And to be successful at that, they need people like me to do the research that I'm doing. So I'm making a practical contribution. This isn't just all in my head theoretical stuff. Can I talk to you over here and then quickly flick across?
If you want.
No, I'm joking. That would be really corny.
So something that's very important to human beings, I think young people generally, is that they really want to matter. We are all genetically the same, I guess, in some way or another, but we all have a yearning to be unique, to be individuals, to have unique personalities, to have unique lives. What's your thought on that specifically? Do you want your life to matter, or is it just a life in the evolution of the world?
Sure. Well, I definitely want to matter. I definitely want to make a difference. But I don't define myself by what I achieve. I don't wake up every morning and think, did I really matter yesterday, or was I just another blip? I mean, I don't think that's a healthy way of looking at your life. That doesn't define my sense of self-worth.
Like, you separate work and life. I mean, you have that division.
Yeah, I do, and I know some people don't, and they define themselves by what they do, but I guess I define myself by my beliefs rather than by my job. Do I think society is encouraging people to think differently and follow interests? So I think big business, the answer to that from them is no. There's a big push after you finish university to look at the big firms for what they can provide, and really that's where your future lies.
You considered that, right?
Of course I did. I went to job interviews, got an offer or two, but it wasn't what I wanted to do, so I chose not to pursue it. I think that's difficult. I don't think that's a choice that's open to a huge number of people. Yeah, I think I'm very fortunate to be where I am. I want to come into work every day and make a difference, not be wasting my time. That doesn't define who I am.
Why? It is such a simple yet vital question to answer.
We as young people face all kinds of issues going into the future, like our financial insecurity, general uncertainty going into the future. We face a commercial environment where the demand for labour and all manner of industries are geared towards utilising and fulfilling an economic goal. But we also face the challenging prospect of finding a life which fulfills our philosophical needs. A life which fulfills the needs of our evolved consciousness. Millions of years of evolution, we have transformed from being creatures led by our animalistic desires, what the Maslow hierarchy called physiological and biological needs, including food, drink and water, into a being that is much more complex, a being with consciousness which desires status, achievement and prestige. While this may be the only thing that makes us close to special or unique in the wider universe, being creatures of consciousness has a weight and responsibility. But what Chasing Unicorns attempts to do is scratch the surface of these bigger questions. Matt and the work he does taps into the very questions of our consciousness and our place in the wider universe. But his opinions are important to take note of, because they show that a grounded and like-minded person like Matt has the ability and takes advantage of the opportunities to reject those chosen paths. and create new ones. But hey, do what you want, or as Lil Wayne says,
I am a gangster, and I do what I want.
Complexity is the problem that any theory of biology has to solve. And you can't solve it by postulating an agent that is even more complex, thereby simply compounding the problem. Darwinian natural selection is so stunningly elegant because it solves the problem of explaining complexity in terms of nothing but simplicity. But here I only want to make the point that the elegance of Darwinism is corrosive to religion precisely because it is so elegant, so parsimonious, so powerful, so economically powerful. The God theory is not just a bad theory, it turns out to be in principle incapable of doing the job required of it.
So what kind of core ideas or, like you said, beliefs do you live by? You know, maybe not in your work as well, but also in your life generally.
Sure. So I'm a Christian, so I believe that Christ died to save me, and so that I can now enjoy a relationship with God. So ultimately, that's my purpose in life. That's what I live for. That's what I appreciate. I think the work that I do is just part of a great way that I get to express that.
Religion and science in one person it can be quite contradictory, I guess, in some ways.
I think people certainly see it that way, yeah.
I mean, how did you combine those together?
Because I think ultimately science asks the how questions, you know, how does this ecological system fit together? Why and how does the Earth keep spinning on its axis and keep rotating about the sun? And then my beliefs answer the question why. Why does it all happen? What's the purpose behind this? So I don't think they contradict each other, I think they complement each other.
The end of things. Yeah. It's the big questions, the really big picture, which is what I'm always encouraged to think about.
Yes,
half of my conversations with my supervisor are, you know, what's the big picture? What's the point? And also a lot of that comes into when you're justifying yourself giving a talk, especially to the public.
Yeah.
It tends to be a lot more, but why? But why? But why? What's the point?
10, 9, ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Again, thanks a lot.
Oh boy.
Thank you. Dear men from the planet Earth, first set foot upon the moon.
There he is. There's a foot coming down. There it is. A U.S. flag on the surface of the moon.
Do you think space travel, space research, academic research in this specific field is popular, or do you think people think it's relevant anymore? If you go back to the 1960s, you know, with the Apollo space missions, I mean, do you think people still have that urge to go out into space?
I certainly think that's still there. You've not got the sort of, you know, the romantic heading to the moon. The sort of human space travel thing has dropped off a bit. In terms of scaling it right back to your sort of cosmological, big Stephen Hawking, Big Bang type questions.
One single unifying equation that explains everything in the universe.
I think people are definitely still interested.
Is space travel and the process of understanding the wider reaches of our universe still relevant? The 1960s was a golden age of innovation. Can we really say that the triumph of sending a man to the moon has been equalled or surpassed by what new iPhone comes out? The work that Matt and his colleagues, like Caitlin, are doing has been sidelined for many years, confined to the lab and small rooms. Their work and its significance begs the question, how does gaining an understanding of the universe, and specifically about the inner workings of stars, even impact the bigger picture? Why, when people would rather spend their money on a new smartphone or eagerly await for new ways to kill angry pigeons, why shouldn't we be happy with our blue globe in our own little suburb of space?
Let's go home, let's pop a beer, and let's live off the interest.
Should young people be more interested in leaving this planet rather than developing it?
So I study red giant stars, which are stars that are like our sun, but older. So it's what our sun's going to turn into. And I study the oscillations in these stars. They sort of wobble in and out. But mostly I look at whether they've got a binary, so whether they've got a partner star, because they can be tricky to detect. So I've developed a method to do that.
It's crazy how important this is to kind of Star Trek, Star Wars travel, right? Because this is like the core of it.
In terms of how we find exoplanets, This is the one that's got the big haul, a few thousand,
a couple of thousand.
at least candidate planets.
I mean, my bigger question is, how does your research tie into the hows and the whys? How does it come back to why we exist at the beginning
big
of
questions.
Yeah.
It's the really big picture, which is what I'm always encouraged to think about.
Yeah.
And also a lot of that comes into when you're justifying yourself giving a talk, especially to the public.
Yeah.
So sort of fellow, if you like, the elite, the expert, you don't have to justify yourself quite as much as you do to the public. But you have to be doing things properly, but it's enough to say, well, it's interesting. Whereas the public, it tends to be a lot more, but why? Why, what's the point?
Yeah.
My specific stuff, I guess, so instead of looking at one star at a time, I look at many thousands and look how the whole population behaves, so properties of the whole population. And that can tell us a little bit about the galactic scale stuff, so the formation of the galaxy.
We can rule the galaxy.
So if I can tell you what the old stars are like, I can tell you what the galaxy now might turn into. But you expect most stars and planets to be in galaxies. They're very different, but I can tell you a little bit about the one that we know most intimately, the one we live in. That's the idea.
That's the important one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, like in Hollywood, there's this weird combination of Terminator,
I'll be back,
Avatar, Matrix, everything about space travel seem absolutely ridiculous.
The Interstellars of the world.
Yeah.
Don't recommend that, it's a terrible idea.
Because these projects are so enormous and they need such public backing, it's difficult if there aren't that many people interested. I think thankfully for the project that I'm working on, people care about life out there. I think that's a worthwhile thing to go into.
To sit back and take in the world for all its beauty and flaws. It's raining.
What would you say to those people who want to answer these questions in any industry, who want to answer why, who want to make their lives matter?
Mm-hmm.
What advice from your experiences?
My advice is simple, and that's to challenge what you believe. I think in this society in particular, although in all societies dating back throughout human history, we're not really taught to analytically review the things we believe and the reasons for them. But I think it's a very healthy thing for any believer or skeptic to do, to review their doubts and review their beliefs and see if they make sense. Don't just take it for granted.
With Matt and the work that he is doing with astroseismology, exoplanets, and with the next NASA space mission, what really stood out for me was his desire and drive to be able to think freely. People in modern civilization, as well as human beings at the most biological level, we are always busy, neither having the time nor taking the time to step back, take a look at the world and try to understand it. Every single day there are decisions to be made, whether it be summoning the strength to go on a run, deciding which mode of transport to endure on the way home. The sad truth is that many young people do not take the time to take a step back, look at the world and understand their relationship with that world. For Matt, his path has taken him towards a life and career which is predicated upon and fueled by asking questions about life and the world around us. In essence, forming the very foundation of future space travel. Now, whilst I think that young people should have a sense of purpose and direction, everyone has the right to live their lives in the best way they deem fit. But Matt is a very important example because he has shown that following your interest is so much more specific, because he has chosen a path which focuses on finding the answers to the questions he has about the world. As beings of consciousness, the ability to think, perceive, gain an understanding and expand our knowledge about the world, and that ability should be used to its fullest. That should never be wasted. But I think Matt and the work that he is doing in space research and specifically astroseismology, I think it goes to show that following your interests, but more importantly looking for answers to the questions you have, may lead you down a road which is more fulfilling. Liam, it could do, I'm not really sure.
If you accepted everything on the face of it, then you wouldn't be a very good scientist. You've got to challenge what you believe and what other people say is correct. Otherwise, can't hope to learn anything new.
Did you know I was recording that?
Yeah.
Alright,